host for this session. Her name is Ufoma Madagwa. All right, everyone, let's welcome Ufoma to take the virtual ground. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I don't know if I'm audible enough. Sorry, you can just react with an emoji if you can hear me. All right, thank you so much, Sama. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar this afternoon. We appreciate your presence. On behalf of the organizers, Aloinett Advisors, the National Action Committee for the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreements, and the Global Shapers, the Abuja hub of the Global Shapers community, I want to welcome each and every single person here. Thank you for making out the time. We appreciate your presence. As we know, we are here for a webinar on, it's a digital awareness campaign for young Nigerians for the AfCFTA. Well, if you're like me, you've called it AfCFTA a few times, but it's the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. So we're here for a digital awareness campaign. We're going to be honored to have several people from several spheres, discuss things pertaining to the agreements. All right, thank you so much, Dorothy. I can see your comments in the chat. So it promises to be an informative session, and thank you all once again for attending. So we're just going to delve right into it so we don't waste too much time. We also have two special guests. We have in our presence today, Mr. Olusegun Olutayo, the Senior International Trade Policy and Law Expert Lead. The Senior International Trade Policy and Law Expert Lead, of Trade Enablement. And we also have Ambassador Yusuf M. Tuga, who is the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, ably represented by Mrs. Simi Ajayi today. So I implore us all to, open up our ears, listen attentively, get a notebook, get a pen. We're going to be learning so much, especially from our panel session. Just a few house rules. Thank you. I believe everyone's mic is muted right now. So thank you for that. Please let's endeavor to stay muted so that there's no interference and then we can hear everyone clearly, and just so that the sessions can go on seamlessly. Please, if you have any questions, endeavor to put them in the chat box and they will be answered appropriately, redirected to the proper channel. Thank you all so much once again for coming. And again, it also promises to be a very informative session. So, all right, Tenny. Tenny said Simi is not here yet. Ms. Simi Ajayi is to represent His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. But if she isn't here yet, we will just delve into the next item on our agenda, which is, thank you so much, Tenny. I can see your message in the chat. So the next item on our agenda will be the keynote presentation. Then after the keynote presentation, we're going to have our very informative panel discussion. Then we're going to have our interactive Q&A session. Once again, please endeavor to put your questions in the chat and they will be seen and answered appropriately. And then after the Q&A session, we're going to have our closing remarks and a call to action. So for our keynote presentation, we are going to be having a keynote delivered on the topic Understanding the AfCFTA and how young Nigerians can get involved. This promises to be very informative because, of course, our spheres of work and business, there are things that the AfCFTA touches greatly on. And I believe that's even the reason why most of us are here. We're here to understand how the agreement would help us in our business, in our careers. So this keynote is one of the most important aspects of course, everything is just as important, but it's one of the most important aspects of today's webinar. So I implore you to be very attentive as we learn or listen to the keynote on understanding the AfCFTA and how young Nigerians can get involved. And please join me to make welcome. You can put your virtual hands together or use emojis to make welcome the representative of the National Action Committee for the Implementation of the AfCFTA, Mr. Kubans Dandaso. Please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Mr. Dandaso. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Ufoma, thank you for that introduction. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, can anyone hear me? Can anyone see me?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ufoma. Good afternoon once again, young Nigerians. The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Maitama Tuga, in absentia, ably represented, the organizers of this webinar, other specially invited guests, young Nigerians, of course, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and once again, welcome to this webinar, AfCFTA, the core, Answer with Action, a digital awareness campaign for young Nigerians. I bring you greetings from the National Action Committee on AfCFTA, that's the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And the man who is steering that secretariat, Mr. Olusegun Awolowo. And significantly, I bring you greetings, warm regards from Mr. Olusegun Olutayo, who is billed to speak and give a keynote address or note on this important webinar. Unfortunately, he's tied up in some activities and he has asked me to represent him. My name is Kuban Standaso once again, and I work with the National Action Committee on AfCFTA. So just a brief context, I know we have an array of speakers who would speak to the subject or the thrust of this webinar. But let me just give a brief background of what the AfCFTA is and what it is, what the AfCFTA represents for the young Nigerians, you know, the entrepreneurs and the youth we have on this particular call. The AfCFTA, as you know, it's the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. It came in May 30th, 2019, signed by 54 out of the 55 African countries. And essentially, the objective, you know, the ultimate objective of the AfCFTA is to create a single market where, you know, Africans, you know, can trade amongst themselves. So essentially, it's to boost inter-African trade, you know, within Africans. So it's essentially to reduce barriers, you know, what you call hindrances or obstacles to trade. What it means is with the AfCFTA in Nigeria, you know, when the AfCFTA is in full implementation, in Nigeria can easily, you know, trade with his business partner or counterpart either in Ghana, in Tanzania, or in Kenya. So you can, you know, look at the AfCFTA as one single market for Africa. Just as you have local markets around you, the AfCFTA creates a single market for the 54, you know, 55 countries in Africa. 54 countries have signed on to that agreement, with the exception of Eritrea that has not signed. And as of March 2024, about 47 countries have, you know, acceded or ratified, meaning they have committed to that particular agreement, and implementation is at various stages, you know, in different countries at domestic level. The AfCFTA, it's an agreement. Now, it has 8 protocols, right? And 8 protocols have been negotiated under the AfCFTA. The 8 protocols are supposed to be the vehicle for the effective, you know, implementation of the AfCFTA. The AfCFTA mainframe agreement, you know, runs on those particular protocols. Now, this is not a technical session where we begin to unpack, but just to give you, you know, since this is this webinar, it's about awareness, you know, on the AfCFTA and what is in it for young Nigerians. There are 8 protocols, 3 were negotiated alongside the main free agreement, which is the protocol on goods, protocol on services, and the protocol on dispute settlement. At the second phase, we had a second phase negotiation that covered investment policy, competition policy, and intellectual property. And then the last 2 protocols which were recently adopted are the Women and Youth in Trade and Protocol on Digital Trade, which essentially affects you and I as young Nigerians. Now, it's important for us to bear in mind that Africa, has the world's youngest population of over 400 million, that are between the age of 15 and 25. So the AfCFTA essentially creates massive opportunities for you and I. I see the AfCFTA as an opportunity for young Nigerians, because they are within the contemplation of the agreement. Like I said, the last 2 protocols that were established, were adopted recently, the Women and Youth in Trade, and then the digital trade, have a focus on youth, women and youth inclusion. So the AfCFTA agreement is essentially an agreement for the young Nigerians. Now, I also want to add that the AfCFTA protocol on the digital trade creates massive opportunities for the youth, massive opportunities for the young Nigerians on this particular call. Whatever you think, whatever you do, or whatever your trade is, whatever your thought is, there is a place for you within that particular agreement. Think of, any business that you do that can be traded digitally. Digital transformation has, altered or transformed significantly the way we do business today. So with the AfCFTA protocol on digital trade, we have massive opportunities for the youth. All we need to do is to engage. The National Action Committee on AfCFTA is a presidential committee that was set up in 2019 or inaugurated in 2019. And we essentially collaborate with, the public sector, the private sector, businesses, organizations, just as we are part of the organizers of this particular webinar, to ensure that Nigerians and youth, young Nigerians like you and I, take maximum opportunity or maximum benefits of the AfCFTA. Like I said, this is not a technical session where we begin to unpack the AfCFTA, but the expectation is that at the end of this webinar, we will begin to engage. I want to end the keynotes from Mr. Lutayo by this favorite quote of his. He said, the expected benefits from the AfCFTA regime will not be automatic. So in as much as you don't engage, you will not see the benefits, that lies in the AfCFTA for you and I. So we need to engage. And how do we need to engage? We need to engage by attending webinars like this. We need to engage by building capacity. We need to engage by reaching out, to people who have a knowledge or basic understanding of what this AfCFTA is all about, and see how we can navigate the AfCFTA agreement, for the benefits of our businesses. I want to thank the organizers of this webinar once again. Thank you for having Mr. Olusegun Lutayo and the National Action Committee on AfCFTA speak to the young Nigerians. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful and a great webinar. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dandaso. Please, let's put our virtual hands together once again for Mr. Dandaso. That was brief and very informative. Thank you so much. Sorry, please, let's kindly mute our mics if we're not so that there can be a seamless flow of. Thank you very much. All right, so thank you so much, Mr. Dandaso, once again. We really appreciate taking out the time, and we appreciate the committee. We appreciate Mr. Olutayo as well. Thank you so much once again. So if you can please go ahead and send your questions in the chat box. I believe I'm looking at one now. So, all right, this is just an introduction. All right, so please, if you have any questions, do well to still go ahead and send them. So just a question to everyone. Does anyone have any idea, or has anyone heard anything about the AfCFTA before today? Have you heard or even wondered more about what it is? If you have, please do well to send a message. Let us know what you've heard about the AfCFTA from Mr. Dandaso's keynotes. Are there any things about the AfCFTA that have been clarified? Any new information that you appreciate? We would love to hear from you in the chat. Thank you very much. Personally, I did learn a lot, actually, interestingly. I like the fact that there are 8 protocols were passed alongside the AfCFTA. And it's also really impressive to see, I believe, the fact that 55 African countries have, have signed this agreement. It's a very good step in the area of what the AfCFTA seeks to, implement. It's also a good indication of where the future of trade is for Africa, especially digital trade. I like that, a protocol on digital trade has been passed. That's very important because we know that in today's age, in this century, most businesses are either fully digital or have a very strong digital presence, even stronger than their physical presence. So it's very important that a country like a continent, rather, a whole continent like Africa, has an agreement like this just to basically enable us, in loose terms, get with the times and also encourage trade. So I appreciate, that we have specific protocols, don't the one on women and youth and all. So thank you all so much once again for being here, for listening. If you have any things that you want to add, any questions still, any contributions, please again do well to send them in the chat. Thank you very, very much. And thank you once more to Mr. Dandaso. All right, now we're just going to be diving headfirst into the next item on our agenda, which is the panel discussion. After the panel discussion, we're just going to be having our Q&A session, then our closing remarks. That's it for the day. But moving straight to the panel session, today we are opportune to have 4 panelists in our midst, and the panel session will be moderated by Miss Queen Esther Michael Hogan, who is the amazing Community and Partnership Manager at Third Culture Africa and a member of the Abuja Global Shapers, Abuja Hub of the Global Shapers community. Thank you for being here, Queen Esther. I will be handing over to you. And the panelists, we have 4 panelists. So the first member of our panel is Mr. Akwara David. He is a global African storyteller and filmmaker, writer, and producer. We're also going to be having the CEO of Norbase, Mr. Adetola Onayemi, who is an LLB holder and an LLM holder from Cambridge. Welcome, Mr. Onayemi. We're happy to have all our panelists in our midst today, as well as you. We're also going to be having on our panel Miss Oseni Elama Osione, who is a legal officer at the NIPC, which is the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. And last but certainly not the least, we're going to be having Mr. Amamchi Rochas on our panel, and he is the founder of Spare Holdings. So these are amazing people from different spheres. As we can see, we have a storyteller, we have an LLB degree holder, we have a legal officer, and we have the founder of a holding company. So this promises to be informative. We're going to be learning how these people maybe we're going to be hearing some of how, the AfCFTA has helped them, or their understanding of how it applies to their businesses, their careers. As young people, what does this agreement really mean to us? What do we really stand to gain from the AfCFTA? So thank you so much to our panelists, and we're glad to have you once more. I am now handing over to Queen Esther Hogan to moderate the panel session. Thank you so much, Queen Esther, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Ufoma. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here again. So there's a quote by Hugo Britt that says that every topic is fascinating if only you can dig deep enough. And the essence of this panel session is for us to dig deep into the African Continental Free Trade Act agreement area so that we could know more and how and leverage on its importance for us as youth, young people in Nigeria and across the world. So if you're joining in from another time zone, I can probably say good morning or good evening. And for our amazing Nigerians and Africans, good afternoon. You're very, very welcome. So we have like an amazing panel. A panel consists of creators, entrepreneurs, those in tech, and those who have experience in this particular conversation. So you can use the comment section to drop your thoughts and if you have any question in regards to what anybody says, and always add at the person's name, one of our speakers, so that we will know who we are directing our questions to. So yes, my name is Queen Esther. I needed to do that again. To our amazing panels, to our amazing speakers here, I really, really welcome you. Thanks for coming on board. Osione, you're welcome. And I can see Amamchi Rochas, you're highly welcome. Okay, so for others that will join us as we proceed, we'll pause and give them a warm welcome. I have few questions here for everyone, for our speakers. Well, before we go ahead, can you just unmute yourself, Mr. Richards and Osiane, just in one word, how do you feel about this? Yeah.
I'll let Osiane go, then I'll speak afterwards.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Can everybody hear and see me fine?
I can.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Osione. I'm a legal officer at the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. I'm very excited to be here because I think I heard about the AfCFTA myself the first time in 2019, and it's been a topic that I've been very passionate about, being a Pan-Africanist. So I'm always excited, even though to speak about this at different events, even though it might not be what I do in my day-to-day job. So I'm excited to see that there are people here. I hope that we can spread the word and awareness. And based on the speech given on behalf of the National Action Committee, we cannot reap the gains of the AfCFTA if we don't take the bull by its horns. So I'm glad that this campaign is coming on to create awareness so that Nigeria can actually take charge and benefit from the agreement. So I'm excited to hear from everyone. I can already see there are some very interesting questions in the chat section. So I'm excited to learn, and hopefully people can also take one or two things from me. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Richards.
Yes,
How do you
good
feel?
afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kunessa. Thank you for moderating this great event. Thank you to the organizers as well, my Abuja Shapers, and obviously the partners for this program. So as Oshino said, I am actually here to learn as much as I am to share my little knowledge. But I think it's very important what we're doing, which is just creating awareness. I actually did not know about the AfCFTA until 2021, so I think I'm a bit late. I'm a bit late on that, but so there's always room to improve our knowledge, and I think that's why we're here. So I'm very excited, and hopefully we all have something to go home with today. So thank you.
All right, that's fine. So good to have you all. Okay, so our questions, they are going to like come from different sectors, but I know that it's niched down to what you've gone through, your experience and your current disposition in terms of knowledge. So I think I'll go with Amamchi, since he spoke last. Can you explain the key opportunities AfCFTA provides for young entrepreneurs and businesses in Nigeria?
Yes, definitely. So I'll first start by saying that, a job of any government is to create an enabling society, right? And I think AfCFTA, I like to say it like that because I don't know the right pronunciation, but I think it does so, by creating a broader market we're usually talking about 1.5 billion people and $2.5 trillion in economy, when you bring all these African countries together. Can you guys hear me? Because I know you're paused. That's good. That's that. Okay. All right, perfect. So just from the business point of view, it's definitely just creating a larger market, to be able to trade a larger market, a broader market, but also a closer market. We're talking about Africa, so I think that is very, very important. I'll speak to be a bit specific. I was able to go to the Gambia 3 weeks ago. And what, on the agricultural side, what we see is that most of the crops we have here are actually used in, across different African countries, right? So for example, I trade hibiscus, and they actually use hibiscus in the Gambia as well, hibiscus flower. Now that's what we use for zobo, but they use it for several other things as well. So things are also even in cassava as well. So, what AfCFTA has really done is just to open up, the bridge to trade within these different African countries. And instead of having to, take hibiscus to Saudi or to any other country, you can just do it quicker, and being able to do it quicker actually gives you less wait time in terms of payment, and all of that stuff like that. So I think just the major point is, access to a broader market, and but yet a closer market. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
All right, that's interesting. I can't believe that the Zobo we are drinking is hot cake somewhere else. Thank you for that knowledge. All right. Okay, so Osiani, I think I have a question for you. Very interesting one, which is, how will the government ensure that the regulatory environment supports and protects young Nigerians engaging in cross-border trade, like, for example, this hibiscus that Amamchi talked about?
Okay. So with the AfCFTA, I think it was mentioned earlier. So there are 54 out of 55 African countries that are involved. And the main point of the AfCFTA is that even though it is a government-led initiative, it needs a lot of grassroots support for it to actually work. So how it works is, even though the agreements have been signed, each country will then create its own strategy for the implementation of the agreement. So for Nigeria, we have the National Action Committee on the So they are in charge of ensuring that the agreement is implemented. So through them, they will speak to all the other agencies involved, such as like NIPC in terms of investment, NEPC in terms of trade and export. So they're kind of like the overarching body to ensure that all the regulatory processes are smooth and go through. I think someone mentioned something like that in the chats. And I would say, just generally to give a background before, there is already existence of trade between African countries, but there has been so much regulatory backlog and slowdown. I know most people will know that African states, ECOWAS, and as an economic community, we also already are meant to have, and the AfCFTA builds up from those economic communities. But the key thing that the government has to do in terms of regulation is creating synergy between the different regulatory bodies, which is a task for the National Action Committee. Even though the agreement has come into force, there's still so much to be done. But through the National Action Committee and the different portals that the AfCFTA is creating, is meant to create sort of a one-stop center for traders to be able to get ease of access to different goods. It might already be easy, say, for Amarachi to maybe do trade with the Gambia because the Gambia is already part of ECOWAS, but it's also trying to ensure that synergy with, let's say, Nigerian traders trading with Tanzania. And one of the key things from that, aside from this one-stop center, is like creating financial tools and regulatory tools to help. I think somebody also mentioned the guided trade initiative. Like, there's so much that we have to cross to ensure the successful implementation of the AfCFTA, and it's step by step. So there has been a guided trade initiative, which is kind of like the first step. It's a trial run, which is a trial run to ensure that we
Oceani, please just
Is that
pause.
for me? Can you hear me? Sorry, I just got a thing to unmute. But yes, so that's basically the answer for the question. Everything goes through the National Action Committee, who's creating the strategy to ensure that there's synergy between the different government agencies. And through the National Action Committee, traders can then get access to ease of doing business, zero tariffs on their goods and products.
Thank you so much for that. I think we have another speaker here, but okay. He is here, but we're just going to give him a little bit. There's an echo somewhere. Okay, so I'll just give him. Okay. All right. Mr. David, it's good to have you here. You're very welcome. So thanks for joining in. I see that you've been available, like you've been with us since the beginning of this journey. So I have a question for you, which is based on economic impact. What sectors are likely to see the most significant benefits from AfCFTA? And even with these benefits, how can young Nigerians position themselves to take advantage of these opportunities? Can you tell us how the creative sector can benefit from? Okay, that's like two questions in one. So let me allow you to answer the first.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. And can anybody hear me? Is it?
Yes,
do I have?
Yes.
So it's very interesting that in answering your last question, I would answer it in my first question. So with the reality on the ground in terms of ease of movement of goods and physical goods, right? It's still very shaky, even to move within West Africa, because I just did a 5-country tour 2 months ago, and we saw practically how difficult it is to move from Cote d'Ivoire to Liberia, from Liberia to Sierra Leone, from Sierra Leone to Guinea-Conakry. Even if we're not moving, even if we're not moving goods in that sense, we're just moving as young Africans, telling stories. So I think that as concerning the AfCFTA, one of the sectors that would quickly benefit from these agreements is everybody who are in the service industry. That's why I was very excited when they fully negotiated the protocol on services. So services is one of the key areas that would move quickly, and African and Nigerians in particular have been known for service delivery. And we can break that down into whether it's technology. We have a lot of Nigerians working for companies even outside the continent, and they never go to any physical meetings. Everything is done virtually. That's the same thing that goes for even the creative sector, that we're able to travel to another country. I had friends who even traveled to Sierra Leone recently to make a film. These are things that are the low-hanging fruit that Africans and Nigerians can take advantage of. So for the AfCFTA, the enormous opportunity that it brings to us, the immediate one that we can touch is moving of trade in services, And I was telling my friends that if the AfCFTA want to truly work, goods have to move. So industrialization is the key pillar. But for now, the low-hanging fruit, while all the pillars in terms of regional bloc build their ease of movement of goods and human beings, before that fully come to fruition, services can move. And one of the key things that I usually encourage my colleagues both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria is that we have to see collaboration as the anchor point for services to move. We have to now be very intentional with relationship building within our regional bloc, outside our regional bloc as well, so that when you have a project that you have to deliver in Kenya, you have a friend or a brother in Kenya who would collaborate with you to make that happen. Because I think, when we start reaping benefit from services that are moving, and the protocol on intellectual property right is firmly done, where every of the intellectual property is being guarded, I think that could be a stepping stone for a lot of things that would come after. You know, Teni would, as Teni said in one of the films that we created on the AfCFTA, she said that the benefit of the AfCFTA is not automatic. So it's a lot of work that would go into it. And I think that people who trade in services have a great chance to push the agreement to a certain level, whilst we wait for the industrialists to catch up with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. That was interesting. Good to know that you are having this experience hands-on. Oh, yes, yes. And for the aspect of collaboration, I think collaboration is key when it comes to achieving global goals and such activity like this. Okay, so my next question will be for Amamchi. Amamchi, yes. Okay, so in line with what she said, I would like you to still throw more light about how I know the benefit of AfCFTA is huge, and more importantly, we're still creating awareness of how young people can take advantage of this. How can we position ourselves in terms of use of social media and other aspects of our businesses?
Yes, thank you, Conesta. I think I would say positioning yourself in this particular topic has a lot to do with awareness, right? So first thing I would say is that as an entrepreneur, what you need to first do is to understand the full scope of what AfCFTA has to offer. Now that comes from being in Nigeria. What does this agreement do to you as an entrepreneur? And what are some things you can quickly tap into? I gave the sample of hibiscus, for example, and it's a thing where there's been African trade already for months and for years, even before some of us were even born. But with this special agreement, now you're looking at the 90% deduction in the tariffs and all of that stuff like that. So, and I'm pretty sure this is not just the one thing. So just understanding the full scope of this agreement, I think that's the number one thing we have to do for us to be able to position ourselves, our businesses. I'm in a small sector in terms of agro trade, but as David said earlier, it really affects the service, the goods, people, even movement of people as well. So it's a thing where we just need to learn to really take time and understand the full, actually read up on it, ask questions, because there's more to it. If 54 African countries have come together, I'm telling you that it doesn't just stop in what the agreement said in 2018 or in 2019 or whatever it is, right? So it's a thing where we just have to keep updating ourselves, understanding the market, and I think that's the best place we can be in terms of positioning ourselves.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. And 53 countries is actually huge. It's really, really huge. It's such numbers. And I just imagine if every young person across like the continent of Africa can literally come together to make this happen. Besides creating job opportunities, it's going to actually foster more peace, initiative, and all of these good things. Oh, Sione, my question is for you. Okay, so what skills do you think young Africans can have to make them take the leverage on this current strategic act that has been created, this agreement? What skills should young people in Nigeria have, be it entrepreneurs, creators, whatever? Like, what skills should we have that cuts across different sectors?
Hello. So I think David actually mentioned something like this when he was answering the first question. But I think one of the key things for Nigerians to have is digital skills. So even though the AfCFTA is made of a lot of protocols, we have trading goods, trading services, and we also have digital trade, which is a key aspect. When you think about digital trade, it's just trading of goods on an online platform. So I think the easiest thing to think of is e-commerce. And I think for many Nigerians, we're used to maybe going on Instagram and someone has like an Instagram shop and you're basically buying something from someone who has an online store. So I think one of the key things is digital skills. So knowing how to brand and market on social media, because what you're trying to avail yourself of the market in 53 other countries. So for you to be able to ease your trade, people also need to know who you are and where you are and what you do. So building up those digital skills are key. But aside from that, it's also the thing of collaboration that David talked about. So building strong networks. It doesn't have to be on social media, but also understanding that, oh, maybe I produce this, or like Amachi is into hibiscus. So he's like, okay, I need to build a network of, okay, I make hibiscus. What is hibiscus used for in other countries? How can I cement myself as part of this greater value chain? I'm not just producing hibiscus for hibiscus alone, but thinking about like a broader picture. What do I have that can create a bigger value chain so that I'm adding value to my good and also ensuring that I'm making more profit from it? Because I think the tendency usually for intra-African trade is that intra-African trade has always existed, but usually it's in semi-processed or in processed goods. So just sending crops across borders, food stuff, which is fine. But I think for young people, we need to think about that industrialization, building up value chains. Where can you see a market gap? And is it possible that you can aid in refining so get value addition, we can get more profits. And it also means that for the entire continent will benefit from it, because if I have, let's say, a raw material from Gambia, which is then processed in Ghana and then moved on to Nigeria for extra value addition before it reaches the final consumer in Kenya, it means that that whole value chain, all the profits from that is happening within Africa versus what usually happens right now, which is maybe a mineral is extracted from Nigeria and then it is taken overseas to be processed in China, and then it's taken to Europe before then it comes back to Nigeria, and then we are buying from outside the continent. So even all those skills, all the development, all the profits from each stream of the value chain are not happening within the continent. And then we buy it at a more expensive price than what the initial raw material was for. So I think those are the key things. I would say building up digital skills in terms of marketing, branding, social media, so that you can have channels across reaching all other 53 countries that are part of the AfCFTA, ensuring that you try to build up those collaborations and networks to know who is, if you produce or make something, who is also within that value chain that you can collaborate with and make that ease of access. And the last one, building up from the second one, is trying to find that market niche. What do I produce? How can it fit within a value chain so that I can get more for my good?
Wow, that's so comprehensive. Thank you so much for that. What do I produce and who is producing such within my value chain, and how can I collaborate? Okay, thank you. My next question goes to David, and it's coming to you because let's say you have had another hands-on experience, and currently you I think because of your storytelling and all of that, you should be in a good place to answer this. How can young Nigerians collaborate with peers across Africa to maximize the benefits of AfCFTA? You're muted.
I think this is my favorite question, and my sister just said something, and I wrote it down, and I have to write this. So, and I'll pick up from what my sister said about, she extended collaboration, and it will be a throwback question to everybody on this webinar. And I'm speaking within West Africa first. And many of us as entrepreneurs have decided to travel to Togo, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cape Verde. We have 15 countries in ECOWAS. How many countries have we gone to? So there has to be there has to be an intentionality with traveling. It has to be very intentional that we should travel within our regional bloc before we start extending it to other regions like East Africa, Southern Africa. The reason is there's a lot of things that cannot happen unless you travel. There are certain relationships that would not get to the next level. For example, I met the Minister for Public Affairs and Political Affairs from Sierra Leone. I met him in Uganda when I spoke at an event in Uganda. And we had great conversation about what I think that we should do in their country. Now, I went to his country last month and we met physically again. The conversation graduated. I began to see even bigger things that could be done, like what my sister said about market, what's the word? Shasha, what it means is that, okay, there's a market for this. For example, in Zambia, plantain does not grow in Zambia. How many of us even know that plantain does not grow in Zambia? And we have a lot of lands. We have a lot of West African countries that plantain is even, it's too plenty. That sometimes they get bad because there's no market. There's no access to market. That's the word, access to market. So one of the things that I think that as a young Nigerian, as a young entrepreneur who want to benefit from the AfCFTA, one of the key things I think that we should do and should be in part of our norm is to begin to travel Africa. In the other part of the world, Europe, for example, that have one of the seamless cross-country trade. My friends there told me that before they get to 18, there's a competition amongst them to know, to have conversation about how many countries they've been in Europe. It's a regular conversation. But here in Africa, we can't even live in Nigeria for 30 years without moving within the continent, but we would move outside the continent when we have a chance to do so. And when we even move outside the continent, it's the jackpot plan. It's not even a plan of, oh, let's go and come back and develop home. So there has to be this consciousness of traders have to move, service providers have to move so that we can foster solid relationships. And then the last thing I would say as regards the question that you ask, there is a very key need for information. Information is one of the key components that I think that we as Nigerians need to unlock a lot of things that happens. And I'm glad that we have a lot of people who are attending this webinar now. It means that there's a growing interest in knowledge. Now that the AfCFTA is calling, and we go answer with action. And the way we go answer with action now, to be involved in things that are around cross-border trade. If you cannot travel yet, let's have conversation with people who are already traveling. Let's start making friends with people who live in the country that we would like to go to. Because eventually, trade cannot work without Africans moving. That's my personal take on this, that trade can't really work. And we cannot move because we want to go and trade. We should first move and see what the market looks like so that we will not have, like I was telling my friends, and this is a premium gist, that if you are moving by road between the Cote d'Ivoire border and Liberia border, when you get into Liberia, for them to take your passport and look at it, you have to pay money. For the person for the person who will transfer the passport to, after he has done the analog registration, you have to give him money. From that person will take it to a particular person that stamps. They have a seal that you have to pay. They don't negotiate that one. And then when you leave the border and you are going into the city that is about 8 hours drive, they have 10 stops where you have to pay money to check. When they check your passport in those stops, you have to pay monies. These things, you would never know about it when you go to Africa by air. So when you discuss things about the AfCFTA, about intercontinental trade or even ECOWAS trade, and you are not moving, there will be a disconnect, because you can be planning your Abicus collaboration, but it will be hard for you to move from Ghana to Cote d'Ivoire, because even as you as a Nigerian that may have not been to Cote d'Ivoire before, you have to pay 40,000 naira equivalent to get stamp. And this is not my colleagues paid that we're traveling together. So these are all these realities that we have to know, so that when we are now engaging, we have, because this is going to be a very big movement. This AfCFTA is calling, we go answer. It's a very big movement. And I have to be engaging with the people at the border that AFC, even regional blocks. Why do I have to pay money to get stamp? Why does Nigerian even have a special feel? And then Ghanaians would pay lesser to go to Cote d'Ivoire. Why? You know, all of these things are things that would help us understand intra-African trade and the AfCFTA better, so that we don't get into these places and where we see the reality and we just chicken out and, you know, give up on this dream. I believe that this AfCFTA is the only way out of financial poverty on this continent. And that's why myself and my colleagues will be making film for the last 4 years to promote this agreement. And we're not giving up. And that's why we're encouraging everybody on this webinar that now that after I've called, please, let's answer. And one of the ways to answer is let's be intentional about traveling Africa and seeing all the others and know how we can, you know, negate this path. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. You spoke out of pain and pleasure. All right, thank you for that. I guess I asked you the right question. Okay, Hosseini, this is for you from the comment section. Why was Nigerian businesses not among those that participated in the GTI?
So I kind of gave typed an answer, but I will answer. Just to note, I'm not a member of the National Action Committee on the AfCFTA. So this is just like from my knowledge. I can't speak officially on behalf of them. But I would say that Nigeria was very much at the forefront of negotiating the AfCFTA. But we kind of had a slowdown, especially when it came to enforcement of the AfCFTA because of calls from because of the need to really bring in the private sector into it. There was some skepticism from the private sector, including the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, that the implementation of the agreement might lead to Nigeria being a dumping site. So it was really a push. So there was a law because the government then had to push to educate the private sector why this is needed, what benefits Nigeria could actually attain, and how this wouldn't end up being that all products are just being dumped into Nigeria's market. So I think that also slowed down, because it slowed down our signing of the agreement and then ratification, which is then enforcement. It meant that we weren't able to be one of the first 8 countries that participated in GTI. GTI, for everybody here, I think I said before, is the Guided Trade Initiative, which is like a pilot test program for trade across Africa. But I know that Nigeria is meant to participate in the second phase of GTI this year. So it is going to participate, but it didn't participate in the first phase. Yes. And then to the second question that person asked about the hurdles that that some traders in Ghana face in the implementation of the GTI. I think that's something that we need to bring to the attention of the National Action Committee. Like David said, unless you're on the ground, you're not going to know what the problems are. And we need to know what the problems are already with the movement of trade for us to ensure that we're creating a seamless environment, which is also what the GTI is also about. So understanding what are the hurdles for someone trading from Nigeria to Tanzania, and how can we ease those hurdles? And even if the National Action Committee might not have noted that the Guided Trade Initiative is one of the initiatives under the AfCFTA Secretariat. So they are taking note of that, and that's something they spread across all the National Action Committees. So we will take note of that. I hope they will see this video. So yes.
I think, speaking of David, I think we should get back to him. Okay, David, like, how can we like get in touch with other businesses? Like, since you travel a lot and you attend conferences and also speak in other parts of Africa, so like you have like hands-on experience with the market. How can a young person, a young entrepreneur, get hands-on knowledge, information on how to handle challenges that's already happening? Yes, and you can also share tips, yeah, just to keep us updated before we start our own journey. Yeah, Tala is here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, don't make me look like I'm a Superman.
You are, trust me.
So one that I would say And it's a basic law that we know, the law of attraction. If you are seeing things that are Europe-like, if you're interested in a black car, you would always see black cars. I think there has to be first a mind shift that I want to be part of continental trading. Naturally, you begin to, things around intra-African trade would excite you. That's the first thing. So that's the place of interest. And then the intentionality that goes into it is that there are certain organizations that champions trade. And one of them is the AfCFTA Bank, African Export and Import Bank, African Development Banks. You know, these are two key institutions that when you follow them on social media, you will be abreast with what's going on. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, they are one of the foremost collaborators with the AfCFTA to see that this agreement is implemented. And guess what, guys? This institution organized event where they get delegates from across the continent. I've been privileged to attend at least 10 plus events that was fully funded by these institutions. And these things happen because there's already a key interest. You want to know what is going on in another country and how trade can happen seamlessly, how collaboration can happen. So I'm always, the ecosystem works in my favor. And then the other third part is that there are youth-led organizations that champions things around the AfCFTA. Sadly, in West Africa, we really do not have proper youth-led organization that champions a lot of continental programs. East Africa has a lot of them. There's YouLead, there is a continental event, but it's championed by those guys from East Africa. So you have to be intentional about finding out institutions or NGOs that champions things around cross-border trade. And then the last part, which is the most important, is that I would say, I think it's 2 in 1. You have to go on social media and start, when you see AfCFTA Bank make a post, especially on LinkedIn, go and look at people who engage on these posts and the countries they are coming from. So if they come from the country that you are looking at breaking entry, for the fact that those people engage with those posts means that they are interested in trade. So you are not very strategic with who you follow. So that's something that you could do. And then once you get into a conversation, make sure you lead the conversation into WhatsApp. So that eventually the different countries that I have been to and the people that I know from the different countries. So you begin to know what is going on in Tanzania because you have somebody in Tanzania who is on your contact on WhatsApp. So if you are thinking of something that is like this, because that my co-panelist just mentioned, you would know you would even pop up a conversation with somebody who is in Burundi and find out that, what is the market for abacus in your country? Is this something that you guys are and then you further the conversation. So these are the ways I think that we can take advantage of, ways that we can apply. And at the end of the day, we can be part of the AfCFTA in full. Like my sister said about dumping ground, it's a reality that Nigeria might likely look like a dumping ground. The reason is because we as Nigerians are not taking this agreement seriously. We're not owning it. There are other parts of the region of the continent, especially the East Africans. They are owning it. So that's why they are championing a lot of advocacy about it. So Nigerians have to own it in collaboration with their brothers who are in other regions, so that collectively, when they talk about the AfCFTA, there will be Nigeria at the forefront. There will be Nigerians there. I went to one of the secretariats and I was saying that it is sad that, when you look at the list of people who attend these conferences, who are speakers of these conferences, they hardly is a Nigerian. And Nigerian, we are the king of business.
Yeah.
Why are we not in this conversation? Why? We are not.
That's why solving the challenge of through awareness. We'll definitely be in the next conversation. Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much. All right, Tola, it's so good to have you. So good to have you. So I hope you're relaxed because we have lots of jam questions to try to. Just joking though. I'm actually coming to you too. Okay, so for Tola, your question is, what policies are currently in place or being developed to support the integration of Nigerian businesses into the AfCFTA framework?
Right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Great to be here. I've missed the Global Shaper family, so it's exciting to get to stop by and say hello and talk to about the AfCFTA, which is something that I am deeply interested in and I have worked most of my career on. As context for those who are on the call, I think that I'm deeply bullish about what the AfCFTA can deliver. There's a lot of echo. I know what that is. Yeah, I'm deeply bullish about what the AfCFTA can deliver. For a bunch of reasons. One is that historically, Nigeria was one of the first proponents of the AfCFTA. I don't know, there's an echo, right? Is this just for me?
I can hear you clearly.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just for me then. That's fine. Don't worry. So that's one. So I'll jump into the question: what policies are in place for the integration? I think that to tackle that question, you need to first dial back to the purpose of the AfCFTA itself. And so the reason we have the AfCFTA fundamentally is to figure out a way where African member states can find ways to do trade amongst themselves, and we can increase our trade volumes within ourselves over the next few years. And the reason is simple. Today, Africa fundamentally exports a lot of raw materials, but also has a lot of trade with non-AfCFTA member states. And that has gotten worse over time. In fact, when you read Tafawa Balewa's 1963 speech, it talks about inter-African trade at the time being 10%. Right, when he was talking about the potential of an African common market. And this was 1963. It was about 10%. Today, intra-African trade is closer to 3.5 to 5%. So it's kind of declined over the last few years. But what are things that are happening? I heard someone talk about the Guided Trade Initiative and the AfCFTA. I think by itself, the AfCFTA is one of that intentional mechanisms that we have put in place to ensure that trade starts to happen among the continent. But I think that one of the principal parts of that, however, is also getting included in the global value chain. I think that one of the problematic antics or mechanisms we've used in the past is this idea that we will not engage in trade with the world. We'll try to engage with trade in Africa. The problem with that is that it doesn't work. Trade doesn't work that way. When I want to buy a shoe, I don't say win Africa as a shoe. I say win the world as a shoe that is a good price and can get to me. And so one of the first big things is even becoming globally competitive from a trade point of view, right? Because people are not optimizing. People are optimizing for who can I order my products from that can get to me incredibly fast, that can get to me incredibly cheap, and can get to me at good quality. That's fundamentally what we're asking for. So speed, quality, and price, right? And so fundamentally, the first thing we need to do as a continent is ensure that we can be globally competitive in our products. Meaning, if I'm a market that sells tires, I can be competitive in it. And that's why one of the big things that I push for and say a lot when we talk about the AfCFTA is that we need to then optimize for products that we can compete in. And we have to be fine with the fact that there's some products and some markets that we will lose an advantage in, and that's fine. So I think what I hear a lot of times, people trying to say, we want to have an airline, we want to have cars, we want to have, like, you need to find as governments and as countries to say, we would lose some markets. Maybe there are going to be 10, 20, 30 markets that will be our priority markets, and we will be incredibly competitive at, right? And you need to then prioritize those markets. So that's one. I think the second big thing is that already we're prioritizing digital trade. So I have worked on the negotiation for the digital trade protocol that was signed by the heads of states in February. And now we're doing the negotiations for the annexes. All right. And that annex is supposed to cover things like emerging technology, cross-border data transfer, financial payments, financial technology, digital payments, remove custom duty on digital product. Why does that matter? One of the biggest difficulties we've had about the last few years in implementing the AfCFTA itself has been that we've had to figure out land borders. So today, our current trade mechanisms involve land borders. They involve going to the ports and then trying to figure out how you harmonize land borders. And that can get problematic, right? Because of 5 things. One is when you try to import through the ports, you then have to deal with the historical problems that we've had with our ports, right? In the sense that some ports are not very effective, aka the Papa ports, and it just takes a bit of time to get things through that. You also have to deal with the fact that we need to then give new trainings to our customs authority, right? And the reason why that matters is simple. Today, there are about 6,000 HS code items. When you try to bring your products in, the customs has to try to clear each of them through the HS codes. Now, the big question is that most of those HS codes have prices pre-routed into them, right? The way it gets a bit more complicated is that the market and your businesses need to now your customers now figure out which of these 6,000 HS codes is it that Nigeria has declared a preference. That preference Nigeria has declared, does it apply to this other country? So it means that you have to do a new set of training for your custom officers, but beyond doing a new set of training for your custom officers, you need to also then figure out in actual mechanics, how does that work through your ports? Do we create a special sub-HS codes for AfCFTA products? The third thing you also have to then deal with is things of rules of origin, in the sense of when I bring this phone to the ports, how does the port authority decide that this phone is manufactured in Africa? Meaning enough transformation has happened within Africa for you to say it's actually an African product, right? And so those are things you need to deal with. But the one thing that does not have to deal with that is digital products, because digital products are done online, right? You don't have to deal with the port and have to deal with the customs. So one of the things we're doing is accelerating digital products. And that's already happening today. Music, digital e-products, entertainment materials, ebooks, a lot of things are already being created online that you can already start to trade within Africa without having to deal with the border. So one of the things we're prioritizing is even banking services, a bunch of things already happening that are entirely electronic services. And I'll tell you my thoughts. I think that we'll make some gains in products, but I think it's going to take a bit of time to get those gains in goods specifically. But I think we'll make a lot of traction in services, right? In digital trade particularly. And I love the way accelerating that part of the negotiation. And that's also where young Africans are most invested. You don't meet a lot of African young people saying things like, oh, I'm on the farm, I just made this. Most people are in e-trade, digital trade, right? Whether they're selling products online or they're selling services online. And that's also good. And that becomes more important when you look at Africa's demographic. Africa has the youngest population in the world. And one thing no one talks about in Africa's data is that over the next few years, Africa is going to have some of the youngest people coming to the labor force, right? And that means that we actually have an explosive potential coming into the services industry. And allowing digital trade happen more at scale means that we're just going to unlock a lot more people at that scale. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tola. That was so comprehensive. So comprehensive. Because the 21st century now, our trade has gone beyond physical to digital. But at some point, we cannot still push out the physical because there's still some person that will never go digital. Yeah. Okay, so before I come back to you, Tola, this question is from Mamchi. For someone that, let's say, a new entrepreneur that just comes into the scene and wants to start trading, let's say hibiscus or groundnuts, something very, very small, but yet it's needed in other parts of Africa, what would you tell that young entrepreneur?
Okay, thank you so much, Vanessa. I think I might have to fight Tola and David at some point because they are all of the service aspect, on the service aspect of this. But which I honestly they're making amazing points, and I think it does make sense. AfCFTA for the service aspect. I would say though that there's a wrong mentality when it comes to trading or in agriculture, right? There's the idea that you have to go to the farms and plant these things yourself, wait for the harvest, pack it, and then package it, put in your containers, take it to the ports and send. But just in the trade of agriculture alone, there are 7 different businesses, within that particular industry, right? You could be in the logistics, you could be in the storage. I mean, there's shortage of all of these things. You could be in even just the packaging industry. So you don't have to necessarily, be in the farms and all of that stuff like that, because you can work with associations. The good things about most of our products here in Nigeria or our crops is that there are associations to these crops, right? So you can get yourself, involved with these associations, ask questions, find out the production volume, and all of that stuff like that. But to your question, if there's a young entrepreneur that wants to start, start going into this particular trade, be it hibiscus, be it groundnut. First of all, I want to say that the opportunity is endless. There's nothing that Nigeria doesn't produce or have the ability to produce, right? So I would first say to really understand and narrow it down to basically what market are you trying to send your products to and why. Why can be a simple thing as, oh, I live in the north, and because if I live in the north, I have more access towards this particular crop than another particular crop if I was in the southwest or if I was in the southeast, right? So you have to first ask your questions of proximity, right? What is close to me, basically, and what can I get some level of leverage or control over? So that's the first thing. So understanding the market, definitely, in terms of the supply chain and then in terms of the offtake, right? As I said earlier, there are some things we produce more than the others. Not that we cannot produce these other things more, but as of right now, we're producing, things a bit more than others. There's something that Osunye said as well. You can decide to also go on the processing aspect of things, right? Which is adding value to these already raw crops. So again, it just depends on which particular area you want to focus on and what particular market you want to look to send your items to as well. And that's just on the agri trade and the trade aspect. But as Tola mentioned earlier, listen, because of this, there's numerous opportunities even on the digital payments platform, e-trade platform. So, I can tell you there's still no, right now, there's no efficient platform that helps farmers connect directly to the end users, right? And that's something we're working on right now. But we still have middlemen that aggregate from these farmers and then have to, put it in the truck, whatever, and then ship it to wherever. So there are opportunities in the physical trade, but also digital payment, e-platform, e-commerce, all of that stuff like that. So I don't want to take much time, so I'll stop there for now.
All right, thank you so much. The reason why I asked that question because most persons have the idea of, oh, I want to do a trade, physical trade, but they don't know, maybe they know how to start, but they don't know how to transfer these goods from Nigeria to other parts of Africa. That's why I asked that question. Thanks for your response. I think this one will be for Mr. Tola. Are you ready? Okay. So what are the core objectives of the AfCFTA agreement and how does it aim to benefit young Nigerians? Tola, that's for you.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke and say it doesn't plan to benefit Nigerians, right? It plans to benefit everybody. But one joke I crack a lot when I go out a lot is that Nigerians have what's that thing? Main character syndrome. We think that everything's about us. But the AfCFTA agreement is not trying to benefit just young Nigerians, right? It's trying to benefit everyone in the continent at scale. But I think there are things we call the general objective of the AfCFTA, and the things we call the specific objective of the AfCFTA. So when you think about the general objective of the AfCFTA, I think the first big one is to create a single market for goods, right, and services. Now, I like to start with this one, and this is how it benefits young Nigerians, and I talk about this a lot. we're Nigerians and we probably don't understand this problem like most people in Africa. But I think most young Nigerians can envision it. So imagine you were born in Gambia. You're a genius. You're like literally a genius, but you're born in Gambia. Gambia has a population of what? 4 million people, right? Slice and dice that 4 million people for purchasing power and for young people and for specific things, maybe like age demographic, and you probably end up with about a 200,000 people market. Nobody's investing in a market that's 200,000 people. Nobody's investing in that market at scale. So what that means that you could have a genius born in Gambia who simply because all the market he has is the Gambia market will struggle, right? And I love something that Mamchi said though, when he was speaking, right, which is this idea that I could have great ideas, I could have this great product, but what makes my product a very fantastic sale is purchasing power. How many people are going to buy it, right? So the thing is this. Imagine I went to a marketplace to talk about my product. And I'm like, oh, I have this great product. I have buyers. My buyers are 300,000 people, even 1 million people. Or someone else says, I have a 1.2 billion people market. One is just more compelling than the other, fundamentally. And that's the first thing the AfCFTA does for you. It creates the single largest market in the world, period. The single largest trade market and single market, the largest free trade area in the world becomes the AfCFTA. It's 1.2 billion people up for grabs. And that's, I think, the first big sell. Whatever your idea is, whatever the concept you're trying to shoot is. And why it's important, because one thing I say a lot is talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And what the AfCFTA helps to do is ensure that opportunity is also a lot more distributed for young Nigerians, for young Africans and young Nigerians. I think the second thing is to create a liberalization regime for goods and services through a successive round of negotiation. And that's one thing that's important. The AfCFTA is not a big bang. It's not one, boom, liberalize. No, it's successive. The idea is that over a period of time, we'll keep negotiating your preferences of things that matter. So for example, we look at the first round of negotiations, it was on goods and services and dispute settlement. The second round of negotiation was on intellectual property, competition law, investment. The third round was on women and youth, digital trade. And that's the idea. The idea is that we're going to keep liberalizing more things. And liberalizing means we're removing the customs duty. That's what, by the way, for non-trade people. Liberalizing means you're removing the customs duty from this product over a period of time. The third big objective that matters, right, is contribute to the movement of capital and natural persons. Right. And I think that's one of the places where we've struggled, right? So today, we still make it easy for us to, we still struggle a lot with the movement of people on the continent, right? And that's something Tenny talks about a lot, right? How do we move people across the continent a lot? Now, I'll tell you this as a secret. When we finished negotiating for the AfCFTA, we actually also had a protocol on goods, on people movement that was also prepared. But interestingly, governments didn't want to sign. They felt like they hadn't agreed to sign. And I'll tell you one of the political issues. When you want to talk about movement of people, one of the first big problems that people face automatically is to say, are people going to rush into my markets? And that's why we kind of need to help the trade happen more easily. Because if trade happens more easily and people know that they can make money more easily in their different markets, it becomes an easier sell to say, maybe no one's going to rush into your market. But one of the big risks today is that some of the bigger countries are worried that they could become a large surge of people from smaller countries into their country. But again, one thing I tell people is this. I think that we have an unrealistic expectation of the AfCFTA that is not founded on any data, right? And I'll tell you why I say that. The Treaty of Rome that led to the EU agreement was signed in 1953. The European Union didn't have any substantive thing till 1993, right? And so that was almost a 39 to 40-year window when they were just figuring and tinkering things. I think that creating a free trade area is hard, right? And I think it takes a bit of time, right? And I think we need to be aware of the fact that that does take a bit of time. Why? Because you need to figure out fiscal goods, you need to figure out digital goods, you need to figure out how to harmonize regimes, you need to figure out monetary regimes, how do we even do money exchange among our markets in a way that works. The fourth big objective is to lay the foundation for a continental custom union. So today we don't have a continental custom unions, right? Because everyone still deals with their own custom themselves. But what you want to get to is a continental custom union where everyone's custom union is one, right? We have one custom system across the entire continent. So that's like one of the big goals. Another big goal, right, is to help with socioeconomic development, meaning put more money in people's pockets, right, which young Africans care about. We're working hard. We want to get more money in our pockets. You know, Sionia wants to ensure that when she looks at bank accounts increasing, David wants the same thing, you know, Queen Esther wants the same. And that is a big part of the AfCFTA, right? Ensuring that there's actual more capital created because we're doing more trade. And it's just the way it works. The more we buy and sell, the way the world has seen that we create prosperity by just doing more trade amongst ourselves. Another big one, right, is to ensure competitiveness. And I like to emphasize this a lot because I find that and maybe because I'm a pure economist, I don't sentimentally look at how trade should happen. The question I ask myself is this the best place to buy this product? So one of the things the AfCFTA hopes to do is to ensure more competitiveness. The idea is that I should not buy a product because I'm like, oh, it's African product. I should buy a product because it's the best in the market, right? And one of the ways to make that happen today, right, is fundamentally by ensuring that we do more cooperation. I'll give you an example. Today, Nigeria has made a lot of progress with processing cocoa, right? But you still see worlds where some markets around us still export raw cocoa beans abroad. One of the things that we should do within the AfCFTA is create what we call common economic companies, right? Where someone can say, you know what, we're great at producing cocoa, but we're not great at processing it. Let's send all our cocoa to Nigeria. Nigeria processes it, and Nigeria can export as one unit, and we can share the profit among the 2-3 countries. That's something like that happens in the US. Go look at how the planes, some of the planes, the Airbus is built, right? One person built. If you go, you should probably Google European Union and the Airbus. You'll be shocked. Some countries only produce the propeller, some countries only produce the plane, some countries only produce the fan. And basically, Airbus is an European plane because every country produces different parts expertly over a period of time. And that's the kind of thing we need to do. And the idea is that we can get more competitive because over time, we are actually contributing more to those specific things. Another thing is industrial development, right? How do we get not just producing, but producing things at higher industrial scale? Today, a lot of production that happens in industrial Nigeria in Africa is very rudimentary. How do we raise that up in the bar over a period of time? Now, of course, there's the specific objectives like removing tariffs, which is a big thing. Liberalizing trade is another big thing, encouraging investment and IP. Today, IP is not respected within the continent. How do we raise that up over a period of time? How do we cooperate on customs duty matters? How do we also create a mechanism for dispute settlement? So for instance, one of the big problems today is that countries use unilateral means. Recently, one of the biggest problems Nigeria is facing today was that we have a high food inflation rate. And a lot of that was caused by the fact that we shut the borders for months, for almost 2 years, right? Closed the borders, food couldn't come in. Now they're debating whether they should zero rate all the food so food can come in at zero custom duty. But the point is, we're dealing with food inflation. The impact now is that Benin Republic and Togo are beginning to do the same thing, right? To charge crazy costs and crazy duties to Nigerian food products, trucks, Nigerian trucks trying to cross their borders. Now, the reason is because we don't have a rules-based system. Fundamentally, what you want with trade is a rules-based system. You want it to be that everyone follows the rules. If there's dispute, we all go to dispute settlement. If there's no dispute, we follow the rules. And that's one of the things the AfCFTA is supposed to do. Ensure that we have it. And that matters for young Africans. Why? People like myself have been lucky enough that you have access to heads of government. And so when you're in trouble, you can go to a head of government and say, my product got stuck. But an average young African or average young Nigerian does not have that kind of access. One of the things that I used to say a lot to the president of government when I was negotiating the AfCFTA, and even during this digital trade protocol is this, I would say, businesses like Dangote, and even people like myself have access to you and can come negotiate preferences. But small people cannot. And the AfCFTA is built for the small man. It was built for the idea that I should not have to have a special preference to be able to get access to preferential regimes. I should be able to get a good rules-based system just because I do trade. And that's one of the biggest advantages of the AfCFTA it's supposed to deliver. That idea that I don't have to be a special person to get trade preferences. I should be able to just walk to the customs normally, import my thing, import my Shein shirt, import my Ghana trouser, import my cashew nut from Togo, whatever it is, without knowing anybody and just be able to trade. And I think the last objective that matters is creating a framework for administering the AfCFTA, right? Because and that's one of the things the Secretariat has done, right? It's a Secretariat today. Now we're being able to negotiate for youth and women. I think one of the big things that matters is how do we, over time, just ensure that there's an institutional framework for that. But I think one thing to say is, it doesn't matter as much whether it only works for young Nigerians. And I like to call that a lot. What you really wanted to do is work for people. And why? Nigeria already has the youngest population. Africa already has the youngest population in the world. Nigeria is the biggest contributor to that young population. Nigerians are illustrious. If the opportunity exists, we'll take use of it. So we don't really need to have something specially for us. What we need more than anything is just a system that works. Why? Because I'm sure that we're competitive enough. I trust the brains in the room. I trust the tenacity. I'm sure that if an opportunity does open up, we'll be some of the biggest beneficiaries of it. And so the way I think of it is, it's less about, is this for young Nigerians? It's more about, do we create a system that works across the continent so that young Nigerians then can capitalize on this? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tola. You spoke from a place of volume, but it's all good. Thank you so much for contributing. Okay, so Oceania, we did like to have get a 1 minute closing statement from you, and it would be great if you can address Irene's question on harmonizing standards, and it goes like this. So there is the challenge around standardization and harmonization of standards. I see this as a major hindrance to trade. I would like to get the thoughts of the panelists, which is you, on this.
Okay, that is a big question. But I think something that has been said throughout this conversation is how the AfCFTA is progressive and harmonization of standards is a big thing. I know we've had a lot of economic integration before, but trying to harmonize standards between 54 countries is a huge deal. And I think it's something that you take one step at a time, which is why I think other panelists talked about the fact that in terms of reaping low-hanging fruit and easier benefits is probably digital trade and trade in services, because goods become more complicated. I can't specifically answer that, but I think it's something that the National Action Committee under the AfCFTA has to be worked through the different standardization organizations, and then that feeds into all the HS codes and classifications. I'm really sorry that I can't give a specific answer, but I think that is highly technical on how the whole harmonization of standards work. I'm really sorry, Irene, about that. But I'm sure that you can send an email to someone from the National Action Committee on that. I think just generally as a final closing statement is that many of the speakers have talked with passion about so much about the AfCFTA. The AfCFTA is built for Africans in general. But I think one key thing about this webinar, AfCFTA decall, we have to answer is that, even Tola mentioned it, Nigeria in itself has one of the biggest markets in Africa. So it's easy to just, as someone who, as a youth who trades or has a service who produces something, to be like, there's a market in Nigeria, I don't need to look outside. And the problem is that Nigerians haven't wholly owned this initiative. But the point of this is that there is so much more outside of Nigeria. There is a broader market. There's room for industrialization. And for me, one big thing about the AfCFTA is that I see it as a way that we can ensure socioeconomic development of the entire Africa. We have issues in terms of food inflation. Nigeria is technically right now the poverty capital of the world. How do we do this? We do this by ensuring economic growth, and one of the key areas in it is trade. So you think about it in terms of right now we are fighting for higher minimum wage. People want to get paid more. And maybe each of us think in ourselves, how can I, in my own little way, contribute to a Nigeria, to an Africa where I can actually live, where I can benefit, where I don't have to worry about the next day's meal, where I'm not worrying about my security because most of us already are in a financially enough stable position that people aren't going to crime. There is no insecurity. And one of the key things, all of that boils back down to trade. We have this opportunity, this door open to say, okay, there's something to do. There's a huge market. There's a way to benefit, and not just benefit as Nigeria, but benefit in a way where we're building up regional value chains, where we're ensuring competitiveness. It's not something that's going to happen next year, but how are we working to build a Nigeria and an Africa that works for us, that is easy for us in the next 2-3 decades? The AfCFTA forms part of the African Union's Agenda 2063. It's not Agenda 2033. It wasn't Agenda 2023. It will take time. There are obstacles, but we need to have that awareness. And David mentioned this, having that intentionality that there is this thing, we are going to access it, we are going to harness it, and we're going to become the biggest proponents of it because there is so much to gain from it. Yes, that's it.
Oh, I think that's comprehensive. Thank you so much, Osene. Okay, Amamchi, just with about 30 seconds, can you give us the final words with the energy in this room right now? Just 30 seconds.
Yes. Okay. I'll try and do it in 20. But as you said, the energy in the room is great. There's something that Tola said that is actually very important. When the EU began such an agreement like what we are seeing with AfCFTA, it took them 33 years actually, or more than that actually, to even get to a place of impact. But I would say that this is what we need to do as a first step, right? Which is awareness and speaking about it as young individuals and understanding the whole concept of it, So it's just, I would say we really just need to take our time to engage, to be intentional about gaining knowledge on all parts of AfCFTA, whether be it in trade of goods, services, people movement. And that's something I want to say real quick as well. I shared about a lot about traveling, but I think let us, more than even having to pay to travel, because it is actually expensive. So take, for example, traveling from Lagos to the Gambia is actually $300 more expensive than going from Lagos to Dubai. So there's still a lot to do in that angle or in that area. And I tell you, most of Nigerians now, especially young Nigerians or even Africans, you ask them and say, okay, would you rather go to Dubai or go to another African country for $300 more? You know what, the answer might not be what we all hope it would be, but that's having AfCFTA would actually push for us to sort of shift our focus in where to go and why. So 30 seconds is a short time, but I would say let us just take our time to invest in learning more about the AfCFTA and the opportunities that it would bring to everybody, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thank you. David, in 20 seconds, can you give us the final words?
Let's be intentional about traveling Africa. Let's travel Africa.
All right, that was less than 20 seconds. Thank you. All right, so Tola, your final words. Okay, while I wait for him, I want to say a big thank you to our amazing panel sessions and amazing panelists, speakers. Your time, your contribution, your knowledge, and everything that you've shared, it has gone a long way. And because anybody looking back to this day and maybe watching this content again later on, will definitely have some insight to draw on everybody's conversation and contribution. Thank you so much. Thank you, Osione. Thank you, Amamchi Richards. Thank you, David, and thank you, Tola. I don't know if you still want to have contribute to any final words, Tola, before I hand over. Yes.
All right. I think that's.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. So I started with a quote by.
I would. Sorry about that. I'm having a bit of a connection issue. Yeah. I think what I would say as a way to close out on the conversations is I think that it's invaluable to have conversations about the AfCFTA. I think that, and I think for a number of reasons, I think that we definitely need to use the AfCFTA more. I like to say that the AfCFTA is a silver bullet, right? It's not going to change the content just because the agreement exists. What happens is that people need to use the agreement, private sector, and government can make it work, cannot. If all the governments decide the AfCFTA will work and businesses don't decide to use it, nothing will happen. And so the way I say it is, what makes the AfCFTA work is everybody deciding and committing to its success. That means, and that involves people even understanding what it's about. Why does it exist? Why does it matter? These long things that it's hard to pronounce. Why do we want it, right? But I think more importantly, businesses trying to use the AfCFTA, businesses complaining when it doesn't work. One thing I find that in countries that have worked is that people actually push and demand that it works. So for instance, if you try to use the AfCFTA for something that doesn't work, complain, write about it. speak about it, push for it. So if you have to use the dispute settlement system, complain to your government, participate in stakeholder consultation, educate your parents, educate your friends, use the mechanisms that exist. Now, they will not be perfect, but if we don't use them, they won't get better, right? And I think that's probably what the most important thing. It's not a silver bullet. It would not take away all our problems in one day, but it's our most serious pathway in a long time to creating an integrated framework for economic integration in Africa and for creating prosperity by doing more trade with the continent. And I just wanted to say that it's a very important thing that we take that seriously, we commit to it, and we do all the work that's required. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's everybody all hands has to be on deck for this to happen. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. I would be handing over this amazing hot seat to Aida. My name is Queen Esther Hogan, and I had a great time. I had a great time moderating this session. Thank you so much, y'all.
All right, thank you so much, Queen Esther. Can everybody, I would like to confirm if everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you for that. So my name is Ida Oluwagemiga. I'm an associate at Aloinett Advisors, and Aloinett Advisors is a trade and investment advisory firm, and we have been able to partner with Abuja Global Shapers, and they've been excellent. They've just been wonderful throughout this collaboration. I'd like to thank the person of Chimdi Nenyako, who's the curator of the Abuja Global Shapers, Zanelli, and our wonderful moderator, Esther. It's just been a great collaboration with the entire team, and just seeing how everyone has come together to make sure that this webinar was successful, and to thank the panelists who sacrificed their Saturday to be here and answer and discuss key issues around understanding the AfCFTA. Thank you so much, Tola Nayemi, and thank you so much, Amamchi, Roches, Osioni. Thank you so much for being here, for making the time, as well as David Aquara, and to our special guests who couldn't make an appearance, Ambassador Maitama Toga, and his representative as well, Simi Ajayi, who couldn't also be here. And a special shout out as well to the Office for the Implementation of the AfCFTA, Dr. Olusegun Olutayo, and his representative, Kubans Dendaso. So thank you all as well for joining in on this Saturday and being here. I'm hoping that we've been able to take some information that could help with understanding the importance of the AfCFTA. So just to quickly wrap up, I would like to urge us to see how we can actually be a part of the AfCFTA. And like Amamchi said, we need to be more focused on traveling within Africa. We need to think more about African integration. And I think that through tourism, we can also make sure that we're able to grow Africa's economy. That's one huge way that I think Africans have impacted in the economy of Europe, the US, and even Southeast Asia. So I think if we're able to direct these funds in Africa, it would be able to boost our economy a bit. And we need to also understand that this campaign is something that's still very much ongoing. So you can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter at Aloinett Policy, as well as Abuja Global Shapers. They're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we should start really thinking more about how we want to participate under the AfCFTA. For people in trade, for storytellers like David Aquara, global shapers, people who travel career-wise, and even tourism as well. So if you follow us, we'll keep sharing updates. And for everyone who registered to attend, we'll be able to send you updates through our newsletter, so you actively can stay tuned to the next newsletter we'll be sending, as well as just checking us out on social media. So thank you once again for joining. Thank you once again, panelists, for being here. It was truly insightful. And we do hope that this has and will go a long way in bringing better awareness concerning the AfCFTA. Goodbye, everybody.